All right, so we're diving deep today
Mm-hmm.
into First Harvest Ministries,
Okay.
FHM for short,
Right.
and their approach to church structure and government.
Yeah.
And we're looking at a sermon by Pastor Vaughn,
Okay.
the founder of FHM.
Right.
And he has some interesting ideas.
Yeah.
He thinks the traditional church model
Mm-hmm.
is
Interesting.
off the mark.
Yeah.
And he presents
Some
his
pace.
own blueprint for how it should be
Uh-huh.
based on,
He calls
it a millennium mentality
Oh, wow.
or a kingdom concept.
I see.
So,
It sounds like Pastor Vaughn's background
yeah.
really kind of shaped his perspective.
Right.
He talks about this idea that he grew up in what he calls the Babylonian church system.
Interesting.
That's his term for it.
Wow.
So it's churches that operate kind of like democracies,
Yeah.
where the congregation has a lot of control
Right.
over the decisions and the leadership.
So it sounds like that experience
Yeah.
really disillusioned him,
Yeah, it seems that way.
leading him to seek a different model.
Yeah, for sure.
It seems like he had this,
Kind of an aha moment like
Yeah.
10 years ago.
right, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He describes it.
He realized that most people, even
Mhm.
people who know the scriptures really well,
Yeah.
don't really get this concept of the kingdom as it's laid out in the Bible.
The kingdom concept.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and for Pastor Vaughn, understanding that is like
Yeah.
the most important thing.
Yeah.
And he says over and over, this coming kingdom,
Right.
it's not going to be some egalitarian utopia. Like everybody's equal.
Right.
It's going to be structured in a hierarchy
Okay.
with Yahweh at the top,
Right.
then Joshua,
Mhm.
and then King David,
Wow.
the 12 apostles and so on.
So FHM is,
Right, and
Yeah.
and get this.
Yeah.
He believes that FHM's structure needs to reflect
interesting.
this divine order.
So it's about preparing members
Exactly.
for their roles.
It's not just about going to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
It's about training.
It's about
Him to
training.
Serene.
Training for reigning.
That's what he calls it.
I like that.
Yeah.
So FHM is less focused than
yeah.
on traditional church activities
Yeah.
and more on preparing members
Exactly.
to take on these leadership roles
Yeah. And
in the coming kingdom.
yeah, he criticizes people
Really?
that have what he calls a church brain.
A church brain.
Yeah, it's this idea that like
Oh,
we need to have democratic principles and equal say.
and he thinks that's
He thinks that's totally incompatible
compatible.
with the coming kingdom.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this leads us to another
Yeah.
distinctive aspect of
This is one of the really interesting things.
their emphasis on
Yeah.
honor and titles
Yes.
within the church.
Yeah. This is where it gets really interesting. Right. And, maybe controversial,
Yeah.
depending on your background.
Right.
But he believes that titles are not just labels. They're signs of respect
Interesting.
that you earn
Okay.
through trustworthiness.
Okay.
And they reflect a biblical model of leadership.
So it's in contrast to
Yeah.
how titles are perceived in secular society.
Exactly. We just accept titles.
Like a Her Majesty
Yeah.
or Mr. President.
Yeah. We don't.
Nobody thinks twice about it.
We don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But within the church,
In a lot of churches.
there's resistance.
Yeah. They don't like to use titles.
Right.
And Pastor Vaughn thinks that's a big problem.
He does.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
He thinks it's a double standard.
Yeah.
He thinks that the resistance to titles in the church is
Okay.
because people don't understand
Right.
what the Bible says.
Okay.
And they don't want to accept
They don't want to embrace the idea
this idea of authority.
of divinely appointed authority.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he even says that people who reject titles
Mhm.
are against the word of Yahweh.
Wow.
Strong words.
Yeah, he doesn't mess around.
So,
And you can tell
yeah.
how passionate he is about this.
Right.
He connects this to
Yeah.
this idea of rebellion
Okay.
against authority.
Yeah.
He uses that word a lot.
Rebellion.
Yeah, rebellion.
Interesting.
Like all the way through the sermon.
What does he see as the rooters?
Exactly. It's,
Democracy.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He links it directly
Wow.
to this rebellious spirit.
So,
He says that democratic principles
okay.
are demonic
Wow.
and that democracy actually led to
Yeah.
the downfall of ancient Israel.
Interesting.
Yeah. He thinks Yahweh is trying to
Yeah.
purge this democratic mindset
Wow.
from his people,
Okay.
and embracing this hierarchical structure
Right.
is part of that.
Uh.
But So many people see democratic principles as aligning with Christian values.
I know.
Like
tough one.
Freedom and individual responsibility.
Right. But in Pastor Vaughn's world,
Yeah.
submitting to authority
Right.
isn't about suppressing freedom.
Right.
It's about aligning yourself
Okay.
with Yahweh's plan.
With God's plan.
Yeah. And he uses this analogy, a courtroom,
Okay.
where everybody
Everyone understands the judge.
right, knows the judge's role
Right.
and authority.
Because their title.
Right, because they're called Your Honor.
Right.
He says we should have that same
That's it.
clarity and respect within the church.
So how does this emphasis on titles and hierarchy play out in practice
He thinks it has real benefits.
in FHM?
The structured approach, like a clear chain of command,
Wow.
a system of honor and respect.
It allows for.
Yeah, you can allocate resources well and coordinate action.
And this
And he thinks that's going to be so important.
especially important
In the end times.
in the end times.
Yeah.
So he's envisioning
It's like a global movement.
almost like an army,
like an army.
a spiritual army
Okay.
with a headquarters in the New Jerusalem.
Wow.
And all these leaders across the earth
Right.
doing Yahweh's will.
And this is where his role as an apostle comes in.
This is where it all comes together.
Right.
He's the one ordaining elders
Right.
in every city.
Establishing this chain of command.
Yeah, from the top
From the very top.
all the way down.
Wow.
He even says he doesn't use the title apostle
Publicly.
very often because
Yeah.
it might freak people out.
Right.
People who are still stuck in that.
In that Babylonian church mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
Ooh.
clearly how he sees himself.
Oh, yeah.
That's his calling.
This is his
This is the source of his authority
Yeah.
within FHM.
So this isn't just an abstract concept.
No, this is
how he's
that's a
building,
real.
leading this whole movement.
It's the foundation.
Wow.
And you know what's interesting? He knows people are going to criticize this.
Right.
Especially
groups like,
the Messianic movement.
right,
They're really wary of this stuff.
of hierarchy and titles.
Yeah. He knows they're not going to like it.
But he says
But he says
that they're rejecting
we reject
the
that.
biblical precedent.
Exactly.
So he's claiming a very specific role
Yeah.
for himself.
Yeah, and it might be controversial.
Right?
Yeah.
But he's also acknowledging.
But he's saying not everyone is going to be on board with that.
Right.
It's interesting.
It really is.
It really makes you think.
Yeah, I think.
When you get down to it,
Mm-hmm.
the most striking thing about this message
That's sad.
is this radical shift.
In mindset.
He's not just like
Right.
tinkering with the traditional church.
Yeah, he wants a complete
He wants to blow it all up.
overhaul.
Yeah, he said,
Like if you really believe
if you really believe
in the
it,
coming kingdom,
then you got to act like it now.
you got to live it.
You got to think differently.
That's where the training for reigning
Exactly.
comes in.
It's not enough to just like
You
believe. You have to actually,
get ready
for the roles you're going to have.
in the coming kingdom.
Yeah.
And part of that is,
And that means recognizing and
Right.
honoring
right.
and submitting to authority.
And he thinks that's a crucial part
That's how you
of developing this
develop that kingdom mindset.
this kingdom mindset.
Yeah.
So after this deep dive
Yeah.
into Pastor Vaughn's sermon
What have we learned?
and FHM's philosophy,
What should we be thinking about?
yeah, what's her takeaway?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me
Yeah.
was this sharp line
To it.
Pastor Vaughn draws
Yeah.
between church,
And kingdom?
like he's saying,
Traditional church,
with the,
with its Sunday services and
Yeah.
all that.
it's missing something.
It's missed the point.
It's missed the point. He thinks the real focus
Should be
should be on the kingdom.
preparing for the coming kingdom.
Yeah. And so it makes you wonder,
Let me think.
is that distinction helpful
Right.
or is it a problem?
I don't know.
It's a good question.
It is a good question.
Yeah.
That's something for our listeners to think about.
Yeah.
It really gets to the heart
What do you think?
of what he's trying to say.
About church.
Yeah. For you, our listener,
Yeah.
consider your own views
On how the church should be run.
on church governance.
How does that line up with
Yeah.
what you think about the scriptures
Right.
and the coming kingdom?
Does Pastor Vaughn's vision resonate with you?
Yeah.
Or do you see problems with it?
There's a lot here.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out for yourself.
You got to wrestle with these ideas.
Yeah.
Come to your own conclusions.
It's a journey.
Thanks for joining us
Thanks for listening.
on this deep dive
We'll see you next time.
into the world of First Harvest Ministries.